sometimes people ask me like, why are you hanging out with all these people who are like half your age? And it's like, well, because of this, because it's like a crystal freaking ball. You get to see where things are going. You get to understand where people are at. And those are the people who are going to be in control 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Right.
So if you can get ahead of the curve by understanding where they're coming from and why they're coming from that place, then you might have a political advantage. The sad thing is it actually is a hostage video. I need help and money. So anything you can collect, if you could do a quick fundraiser and just send it. Otherwise,
I think we should go and give plasma, because that's about where I'm at. I mean, I'm ready to sell a kidney at this point.
Being a legislator, it's such a enriching and empowering experience. You just get to the point where like you don't have to worry about anything because all your financial, mental, medical, physical, spiritual needs are totally met by the state.
It's as holistic as it gets.
It is. It really is. It's like there's nothing else you have to worry about. Once you're elected, life is just a cakewalk.
Yeah,
nothing to worry
cakewalk.
about.
That's 100%. Been the last 3 months for sure, huh? No, we're here, man. This will be fun.
We're here. So what are we talking about tonight?
So this is kind of a kickstart to Gen Free, which is going to be a podcast that I'm going to be launching. Something that I've talked to you about, Walter. I think there's a real urgency right now to finally get politics without any of the fluff or the BS on the side of it, especially amongst the younger generation, which just sees through all the platitudes and nonsense that's going on in the world. But I think we're going to kickstart today and kind of a sidestep to that Gen Free podcast with a where do we go from here sort of episode, because holy hell, a lot happened today and a lot's going to happen tomorrow. And before you know it, we're going to have a midterm election that might determine whether or not we ever have elections again in 2028. So I thought we'd start out with the fact that the socialists just lost all the commies in these 3 congressional primaries, and it is so obvious that the Democrat Party has been lost and hijacked to people who are even more radical than those 5 years ago that we called radical. I mean, it is as far left as it gets.
Well, so 2 things can be true, right? And in this case, they both happen to be very useful for our purpose in having this podcast recording, which is 1, I have not been paying attention to the news at all. I have been blissfully unaware of everything happening in the world for quite some time. And so that means that I can play the role of the audience. I can play the role of the person who has no idea what the hell you're talking about. So why don't you fill us in on what exactly it is you're referring to?
Yeah, no, that's actually kind of a good role to play, because if you knew, I think you'd be scared. Basically, 3 congressional Democrats were just primaried. 2 in New York, 1 in California. And all 3 of them are not only Democrat socialists, but there's video of in New York, the gal who just won this New York primary for a congressional seat, saying that 9/11 was America's fault. In New York. In New York.
Right.
I mean, it is 25 years since 9/11, and we are now embracing and electing people who are apologists for 3,000 American deaths. And it wasn't but 24 hours after those primary wins that Gavin Newsom, who is obviously running for president, decides that he wants to go out and embrace the craziest of socialist policies that have been passed in their legislature, which is in a supermajority. Everybody was kind of, I think they had a forethought that he was going to veto these bills because they were simply so insane. The flight of wealth that's about to leave California is going to be insane. But because of the changing winds and the real, I mean, there's a forceful leftist base right now that is demanding nothing short of Marxism. And if you're anything to the right of that, then you must be a Donald Trump apologist. That's kind of the sentiment right now. And I think with some of this the SCOTUS ruling that came today and another couple that are going to be coming tomorrow, there's just an ever-changing political climate, and each decision can either make or break us.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, and maybe this is overly optimistic, and I don't base this impression on any sort of scientific or targeted polling data or anything like that, but just like my general sense of the direction that things seem to be going. There seems to be a trajectory that the Democrat Party is going into. I've often said that the controlling interest of their party has been completely hijacked and captured by the most radical among them.
Yes.
And what you're,
Yes.
what you're talking about speaks to that point, is that we're talking about people who are, these are the dismantled the United States people, right? Like,
Yes.
these are the people who are like, dismantle our institutions. White people are bad, just fundamentally.
They
They need to
don't they
pay.
don't hide it. They hate
Yeah,
America.
they
And they're
hate
swearing an
America.
oath to it, to defend and
100%.
protect it.
Yep. And if you're not willing, as a Democrat, if you're not willing to affirm that, then, as you say, you're going to end up getting primaried. And so
Yep.
what that's done is it's created this trajectory that the party is headed toward, the Democrat Party, where it's like they've chosen to go down a slide that's greased and they can't get off of it.
Can't get off it.
Um,
Yep.
and what that means is, I would like to think, is what it means is that at some point, because let's ask the question, why have the Democrats allowed this to happen? Like, why is the party leadership and the donors and the folks who are actually like part of the power infrastructure within the Democrat Party, why have they allowed themselves to get to this point? And I think the answer is that they intrinsically know that their grasp on power is significantly more flimsy than they would like to project. And in order to maintain their coalition, they have to appeal to the segment of their electorate that is the most likely to pull away. And that segment is the craziest of the crazy. And so they have to
That's an
appeal to the
interesting take. That's very interesting.
I mean, they have to appeal to the nonsense in order to be able to continue to win. The problem is past a certain point, you start to lose people on the other end of the spectrum, right? Like, if you
It's
keep
always a
going,
balancing act, right? Right.
right,
Well,
and
I mean,
and,
look,
and
Chuck
they're at the
Schumer's
point where they
terrified
can't
of
win.
AOC primarying him, so he then
Yeah.
needs to weigh his rhetoric and how he speaks on the Senate floor and the bills that he supports, and how he goes about his day looks a lot different when AOC is on his heels. But I
Yeah.
think that AOC and the upcoming young bench, the young guns within the Democrat and the Republican Party, quite frankly, they recognize the day and age. One of my favorite quotes is by Napoleon Bonaparte, who said, "During times of revolution, do not listen to anybody over the age of 40 because they are not in tune with the times." And it was really interesting. I mean, coming from a 27-year-old goofball who doesn't know everything but understands that right now we're in a fight for the soul of the nation. My kid will either live in a United States that potentially is under full Democrat control, with DC as a state, Puerto Rico as a state, a packed US Supreme Court, and a forevermore leftist ideology that's imprinted on it. That's if we lose the 2028 election, because they've told us that this is everything that they're going to be doing. And it's extremely smart for them to do so. I think that they're repackaging Marxism and making it more fun and likable. And you see that out of Zohran Mamdani, you see that out of AOC, you see that out of a lot of the younger and more woke and fervent leftists. They're not going to hide their radical views, but they're going to wear it with a smile. And I think that's what we need to be most concerned about, because there's still an overwhelming tendency amongst our own side to self-censor and
Yep.
to equivocate to the most nonsensical ideas that have ever existed, to the point where conservatives right now are fighting over whether or not to pass the SAVE Act, which says
Yeah.
that you should be an American to vote in an American election. We shouldn't have to think twice on these sorts of things, but that's where we're at because we have such a weak and a very fundamentally institutionalized Republican Party rather than one that is in touch with the average voter.
That's 100% correct. And this is, so there's a couple of fundamental differences that your comments there point out about the distinction between Republicans and Democrats in the year 2026. One of them is the fact that, for whatever reason, the Democrat establishment is completely in tune with the trajectory of where their party is going, and they're
Yep.
adjusting accordingly. Republicans are not. Republicans have no idea the direction that conservatism is headed. And they're still trying to operate in this space that's like a 2010
Yeah.
or 1990 version of conservatism. And you talking about young people and that Napoleon Bonaparte quote. Sometimes people ask me like, "Why do you hang out? Why are you hanging out with all these people who are like half your age?" And it's like, well, because of this, because it's like a crystal freaking ball. You get to see where
Yeah.
things are going. You get to understand where people are at. And those are the people who are going to be in control 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Right.
So if you can get ahead of the curve by understanding where they're coming from and why they're coming from that place, then you might have a political advantage at some point, right? And
Well,
I feel like I'm one of the only Republicans over the age of 30 who is tuned into that.
dude, you're 29 at heart. Let's just be honest. But
Well, for
look,
better or worse.
and it's not because we're wiser, it's not because we're smarter, it's because we are experiencing the downstream effects of elected leaders from when we were young. And now
Yeah.
we're seeing what that has amassed to. I mean, the culture that we grew up in looked very different than what it does today. And it's only been 10 years since I was, still an adolescent. So in that short period of time to see how far we've gone, where conservatives have given up on the most, on the issues that were core to our very being. If we can't conserve the notion that kids shouldn't be giving themselves sex change surgeries or mutilating themselves indefinitely, what are we conserving, man? And I look at, now you have a SCOTUS ruling today, right? That is going to be allowing for ballots to continually be counted after election day. Amy Coney Barrett let us down big time on that one. And so now we have it just goes to show the level of, we need an immediate action right now to pass the SAVE Act. We need an immediate action to continue deportations of the worst and most heinous amongst us. We need to demonstrate the fact that Minnesota Democrats passed bills purposefully, House File 3 and 4 in 2023, to make it so that illegal immigrants are voting in our elections. They don't believe in democracy. They don't believe in rule of law. They don't believe in anything other than power and money. And if we don't get our act together, they're going to have it.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny because again, I haven't been paying that much attention to the news. I've been tied up in other things recently. But you telling me that about the SCOTUS decision today put one of the tweets that I saw today into context, and that's why I was laughing because I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I get it now. But yeah, I mean, it's nuts. Like, and again, that goes to our side, and I haven't looked at the ruling, and I don't know what her reasoning was. Maybe it was well founded in law
It
and
wasn't a
precedent. No
well-founded.
idea.
I didn't believe so, but that's just
Okay.
me.
But even granting her the benefit of the doubt, like our side doesn't seem to understand that the stakes are too high to mess around. Like you can't be
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
you can't be acting as though we're operating under conditions of good faith where both sides have a different perspective but the same goals. They don't.
They don't.
One side has
They can't agree on
fundamental
anything.
goals.
Yeah.
Right. One side wants to dismantle the United States. One side wants to be the crabs at the bottom of the bucket that pull everybody else down.
Yes.
And the other side wants you to be able to fulfill your potential. And that's a binary choice. There's no room for compromise in that choice. One side is going to win, the other side is going to lose, and your capacity to live your life according to your own values is going to be determined by which does.
And that's
So,
why it drives me so nuts when people like Susan Collins and John Thune and Mitch McConnell and the institutionalists who have been in there for seemingly going on 30, 40, 50 years, they say, no, that's not the way that things are done. So we don't do it. We
right,
don't break the
right,
filibuster. No,
right.
no, we need to preserve the institution of the Senate. These people have told you that the second that they take power, it's broken.
That's just
So do
it.
you want to preserve the institution by maybe not having your own principles kick your own ass? Do you want to do something, or would you rather just sit down and be the managed decline oversight of our entire country? Because that's how it feels right now. And to be quite honest with you, Walter, I know I'm just giving an opinion right now, but I thought that the Trump administration was going to do a hell of a lot more to fight those battles than they have thus far. We've been
I agree.
really
I agree.
focused on Iran and
And
other things, but
it has been very disappointing. I was talking to somebody earlier today. I went over and had lunch with a friend at their home, him and his wife, and we talked about this amongst other things. And one of the things we talked about is people, and I've made this mistake myself, people projecting that there's something big coming, right? Of like, oh, something's coming around the corner, you just wait and see, and then it doesn't. And specifically with me, I made that promise when it comes to consequences to elected Democrats, major elected Democrats, folks like Walz, Ellison, Jacob Fry, Elon Omar, when it comes to this fraud stuff. Because
Mhm.
from my perspective over a year ago, based on everything that I'm privy to, they were all going to go to jail.
They
Like
should be in jail. We don't
there
have
was
justice if they're not.
right, like there was no, based upon what I had been told by people who are in the know, there was no logical reason why they would not all be in handcuffs within 3 months.
Have we dove
Um,
into that yet? And are you in a position to be able to do so?
I mean, I can go into some detail, but the problem is, and I've talked about this before on my own channel, is that some of the reason why things haven't happened is because the people who do have knowledge of the specifics have been unwilling to cooperate with law enforcement because they're afraid for their lives. I mean, we're
I
dealing
don't
with,
blame them.
that's the thing. You watch a movie like The Untouchables, right, about like prohibition in the 1930s, and you think to yourself, well, that was then. It's so much better now. No, it's not. We live under the exact same sort of corruption, the exact same sort of extortion, the exact same sort of, if you mess with us, we will kill you and your family and
In
take
many ways,
everything.
it's on steroids because of the surveillance state that we live under as well. And
Right.
people have access to information via our technology. Our cell phone has kind of the entire fingerprint of what it is that we're doing. And we just heard from whistleblowers not long ago within Minnesota government that there was military grade surveillance systems that were being put into their own programming so that they could tell whether or not somebody was whistleblowing on their own fraud, and it would be met with repercussion. I mean, that's the day and age that we're in, and I think that the general populace, because while all these wars are going on, while all of this infighting is going on in the trenches, people aren't able to just live their lives. They can't afford a home. Average or median home price right now is $439,000. Average age of buying a home is 39. Average college debt after a 4-year degree is
Well,
just north of $84,000. And a 450
you
square foot apartment with an 800 unit, development is $2,500 a month. People are
you you and
struggling.
I you and I both know multiple people just a couple of years younger than you who are still living with their parents.
Yep.
And it's not for lack of ambition or talent or drive or capability or productivity or virtue. It's not for any of that.
Yeah.
It's because they've been priced out of the
Correct.
market.
I'm actually going to go a step further into that because this is something that I've been chewing on a lot recently. I think that the Republican Party has a monster that they haven't yet slain that they're going to need to they're going to need to face it here pretty soon. Corporations are not our friends, and I think for a long time there's been this false juxtaposition between what it means to be a capitalist and what it means to be a corporate cronyist. And I think Josh Hawley is one of the best when it comes to taking on this issue. But look at the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce here in our state, for example. They go and they support legislation for driver's licenses for all for illegal immigrants, um, not knowing, or maybe they do know, but they don't care because it's going to bring in cheap labor for their members. And now we're faced with an actual fight to ensure that our elections are being voted in by just Minnesotans. They go and they support the 2040 blackout bill, which mandates a carbon free or carbon neutral energy grid by 2040, with absolutely absurd mandates of 85% carbon neutrality by 2035. It's completely undoable, but they know that Xcel Energy is going to be given a blank check and a monopoly, a government sanctioned monopoly, and that's all in the name of capitalism. You have Mayo Clinic and Walmart, Target, all the big box stores, they're always exempt from the same mandates, taxes, and just overreach that our main streets are. And I think that's a large portion of the issue here as to why Gen Z, we're working our butts off. If you look around at peers of mine, we all have bags under our eyes. We're all going a million miles a minute, and we all feel like we're just treading water barely.
Yeah.
And I know that there's kind of that pervasive, just stereotype of, oh, look, it's another Starbucks barista Gen Zer. But there isn't an opportunity for us to go and take risks, because a risk for us means not having a home, or I'm sorry, not a home, an apartment, which is $2,800 a month. It means not being able to pay your college tuition bill when it comes at the end of the month, or utilities, or food or gas. People are looking for opportunities and a passion-driven sense of occupation, and they're not finding it because the corporate cronyism has kind of taken a foothold over most of the economic sphere. And so I think that that's a massive issue that I think Republicans are going to have to, finally have a conversation about, because I'm not all about giving data centers everything that they want and telling everybody that somehow that's good for them.
Yeah, well, and that's an example of an issue that, at face value, and that's the nice part about, like I say, as somebody who's older, as somebody who's of a different generation, having conversations with younger people, it kind of disorients and disrupts preconceptions and thought processes, right? Because when somebody comes to me, the folks who are for the data centers, when they come to me and they say, well, this is great because it's going to bring in all this property tax revenue. It's great because, AI is the next Cold War, basically, the next arms
Yes.
race, and America needs to win. Otherwise, China's going to take over and yada, yada. Like,
That's a lazy argument.
based on my own preconceptions of how I grew up and the world in which I grew up, it's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Of course, we want to defeat the communists when it comes to the arms race of AI.
Right.
But then when I talk to folks in your generation, they're like, "Are you kidding me? Like, you realize what they're going to do with this technology, right? Like, you realize that it's just there. It's take, 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 and no give. Take, 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 and no give. And they're
It's
not
absurd.
wrong.
It's
Yeah,
absurd. I mean, I just watched a short documentary recently, and this isn't being pushed out by far leftists. I know some of the far leftists don't like data centers simply for the environmental
yeah,
and typically water rights. It's pretty insane how Bill Gates all of a sudden doesn't believe in climate change at all as soon as he wants to build a data center. But I of course this is a necessary technology. Of course there is an innovation race, because the wars of the future will be fought based off of not only your capability of output financially. This is going to 10x any GDP that America could currently produce. But it's we're essentially working our way out of an occupational necessity at all. I can't stand it when people bring to our generation or say to others, look, you can go and work and build data centers. You could do coding. I'm sorry, coders were just the number one laid off position in America last year. And then number two, paralegals and attorneys, because they're having AI do those sorts of jobs. If manufacturing or trucking or anything else under the sun, if those jobs just completely evaporate, then I feel like we're kind of in a point of stagnancy as a human spirit that basically just lives to serve the machines and sweep up the floors occasionally at these data centers after they're built, and it takes about 10 years to do so. Um, it's a really interesting time right now, and I think about what the world's going to look like when my son's my age, and I'm not sure I can answer that question.
yeah. No, well, there's so much mystery. I think looking ahead to the next few years, there's probably, and I don't, it sounds like an exaggeration. It sounds like hyperbole,
Yeah.
but I think it's a rational thing to say that at no other point in human history has there been more mystery about what comes in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because of the rapid advance in technology, because of the rapid march of Marxism, socialism, communism across the globe and within the Western world, because of the mass migration, because of the suicidal empathy that has been
Yes.
exhibited and embraced by the West, where we're apologizing for our own existence and saying, "Oh, you're right, we should totally change our culture to benefit these other ones that have not produced the same positive, productive results." And if you disagree with that, then you're a racist and an
Somehow
Islamophobe,
bigot. Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, right. Um, are we going to be able to, because we're in a nosedive, like civilizationally we're in a nosedive.
Correct.
Are we going to be able to pull back on the stick and get the horizon beneath the axis of the plane before we crash? I don't know.
I think my answer to that is you can't always have a pilot that's going to be able to land the plane after both engines are out, but at least you can have one that tells you the truth and kind of calms people down and keeps us at a trajectory where we're not always at a level 10, right? I
Yeah.
feel like if voters are looking for anything in the upcoming midterm election or long term in the presidential in 28 and 32 down the road, they're looking for sure-handedness and honesty. They want somebody who's going to be personable. It's not going to just blow smoke up their rear. They don't like the Gavin Newsoms that are, basically politicians made in a petri dish who don't believe in anything and are willing to say whatever it is to remain relevant or get elected again. They want somebody who's going to shake up a system that is fundamentally broken and only serves the political class at the expense of the working class. They want somebody who's not going to just bow down and cater to the powers that be, whether it be a data center or this notion that we must import the same thing that every other country is trying to trying to end when it comes to fraud or the amount of rape that's been going on in the UK of little girls that's been completely unreported by BBC.
Quarter million, quarter
Yep.
million
Quarter million young
people.
girls. Think about that.
Yeah.
And somehow you're bad, and you could actually face hate speech laws if you say that those people should not continually be your next door neighbor.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating to consider the whether or not we're going to get to a point civilizationally, and I feel like we're kind of there. Like if you look at the culture, people say politics is downstream of culture,
Yeah.
and Hollywood has been cranking out all of this woke nonsense that has been bombing, just
It's
bomb after
garbage.
bomb,
Yeah.
bomb after bomb. But then every once in a while, you get something like this year. There's been like independent movies,
Yes.
Obsession, Backrooms, that have been extraordinarily profitable because they understood the assignment of,
Yep.
we're supposed to tell a story, we're supposed to speak to something fundamentally innate about the human condition, and be somewhat, even if it's a horror movie where it doesn't have a happy ending, there's still an appeal to values and virtues that, if embraced, would result in us living better lives.
Yes.
Uh,
But they're
and
outside of the current institutional broken system. They're all very
right,
independent
right.
minded.
And I think maybe I think the tipping point that we have to get to is that people who identify as Democrats, people who identify as left of center, have to come to realize the extent to which they've been lied to by
Yes.
powers in their own institution. Because, like I'll speak just directly to the leftist who's watching this. Like, you think that your party is about challenging power. You think that your party is about obtaining equality. You think that your party is about justice and fairness and, um, giving everybody a leg up so that they have equal opportunity. The reality is 180 degrees the opposite of that. 180 degrees. Your party is dominated by the richest people on earth.
Yes. Yes.
Republicans in Minnesota get outspent 10 to 1.
Wall
If
Street is the party
you
or
really think
is for Democrats now. Wall Street completely is for Democrats.
that's just it. If why how is that possible? If the Democrats are really the party of the little guy, if they're really the party of your neighbor and your sister and your grandma, then where are they coming by all this money? How do they
I will
how
say
have they
I will say
obtained it?
this though, Walter. we should take some of the blame for the lies that they've consumed and eaten up, because we're really, really bad at marketing good ideas, and the left is so good at marketing the worst ideas that humans have ever invented. Over 150 million deaths can be attributed directly to communism, and yet somehow it's being ushered in right now with a smiley mayor in New York and a gal who worked as a bartender in actually in New York as well with AOC, and they go on TikTok and at least they tell people what they believe. Whereas we stay sheltered. We're a little bit more, oh, this is an institution that deserves some, you know, notoriety and respect and astuteness. And people are done with that era of politics. There's a reason why Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, those talking head punditry bullshit, it gets 3.5 million views in prime time at most, whereas Joe Rogan with a 4.5 hour sit down gets 18 million downloads. It's time for something a little bit deeper.
Yeah, it as a total side note, if either you or I ever end up in Congress and AOC is still there, I think one of our missions should be to find out whether or not she can still mix a drink. You know, like
I I I'm going to have to turn down the drink if she can. I will. But look, we're humans. I think people want humans as elected officials. I don't think that they want perfection or that they demand perfection. I think that they're looking for somebody that's going to shoot them straight.
yeah.
Because the last time that a politician said that I'm sorry, it was JFK after the Bay of Pigs, and his approval rating went from 36 to 62 because nobody had seen it. There's just an overwhelming sense of how am I always in the right, and blame cast to somebody else. I think that there is a broken two-party system right now, and a lot of Republicans will try to convince you that they're fighting for you and that they're really concerned about the issues that everyday people actually face. And then they go up there and they're not that concerned about it. They're a little bit more content talking about the things that matter in that building than what matters outside of it.
I think a big part of the problem, and this comes from, and granted, like everybody, I have a limited perspective, right? I only know what I know. I only have the experience that I have. But after 4 years, which you've got the same experience, 4 years in the legislature here in Minnesota, in the House of Representatives, what I see when I look around at our colleagues, particularly in our caucus, is I see people who get it. They understand it's wrong,
Yeah.
and they understand what should ideally change. The problem is they and us, like everybody else out there watching this, are not free to act because
That's number one. Yes.
the institution has been structured in such a way. I was thinking about this today because
And me too.
somebody was somebody was encouraging me to, you know, make moves in the future, and I started to actually entertain, well, like, what would I do? Like, if I was in charge, what would I do? What would I do differently, specifically in the House? Um,
Let
and
people legislate.
yes, that's 100%
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, because a rising
Take
tide lifts all ships. It's almost like
take the
concentrated power
shackles
in the
off.
hands of a few
Yeah,
is a dumb idea. It's actually the antithesis of good leadership. It's the only thing we've known in the legislature, that we're not capable of understanding what it is that they understand behind closed
right.
doors with bureaucrats that have been staffers in a perennial losing environment for going on 20 some years.
Yes.
That they're the
Yeah,
ones who get to make the decisions, and we're just a formality. We press a button. They already
we're a
know what
monkey
the,
that
what the
presses a
outcome is.
button. We're a
We're the
monkey that presses a
illusion
button.
of representative government. And when somebody comes to you and has an actual issue that they want to see addressed, basically the, the most honest answer that a rank and file member of any government can give is that I'll talk to the powers that be and see if they care
That's
enough
right.
to lift a
That's
finger.
exactly right. Well,
And they
hey,
never do. They
thanks, thanks
never
for
do.
spending thanks for spending 15, 30 minutes talking to me about your problems. You've convinced me. Now it's up to me to go spend 3 months trying to convince somebody who actually has power
Yep. Who I only
that you're
see for 3 minutes during those 3 months.
right.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Right. That's exactly right. So yeah, I mean that's what I would do is you wave a magic wand and I'm Speaker of the House, right?
Yep.
First thing I'm doing is we're changing the rules.
Yes.
Like committee chairs are no longer in charge.
No more
Committee
24-hour
chairs,
amendment deadlines. No,
no
nothing like
24-hour
that.
amendment
Yeah.
deadlines. Being a chair is the same thing as being the mayor of my city, meaning you have the exact same power as every other council member. Your job is to preside, march in parades, and wave.
Yep.
It's ceremonial. You have to
You're
actually,
not a gatekeeper. You're not a gatekeeper. Yeah.
you have to
Well,
actually
and not only that,
establish
it's a gatekeeper who basically is just incentivized to be a perennial bootlicker who raises some
Yes,
money for the caucus. And
right.
so long as you do that for 30 years, well, then you get a gavel, you get a chairmanship. It literally is elevating the laziest and those with the institutional knowledge or the expertise in a particular subject. They're kind of hamstrung, and that's why we see people like Ben Bakeberg, who should be a chair of an education committee. It's why you see people that should be a chair of a tax committee or something else. I think at some point we need to dive into our own issues because we don't do that enough. We don't elevate good voices or
No,
disincentivize laziness to go away.
I was explaining this to the couple that I was having lunch with today. I'm like, what ends up happening, because they were asking like, what can we expect after the next election, or what have you noticed in terms of like the way things go, and like one, I think the way they phrased the question is, have you gotten to the point where you dread the session starting? And my answer to that was, well, every session has been different.
Yes.
Because when we first came in, we were under a trifecta in the minority, and so we knew that we weren't going to be able to actually do anything anyway. And your role in the minority, especially under trifecta, is
A
just complain
voice.
about
Yeah.
it. Right? And then this term, we come in under this tie. The Democrats decide not to show up for work for a month, and then sometime later blame you and me for going to lunch for 20 minutes,
Yeah.
which was a fascinating experience. Uh,
I learned
and
so
and
much.
so
Yeah.
it's like, and so that creates a scenario where it's like you have a little bit of hope of like when maybe we can get some things done. And we did get some things done, but it lacked intention, it lacked planning, it lacked purpose, it lacked, like, it was just, and I
When
explained
your
to them, I'm
house is
like,
on fire and you bring a watering can
correct,
for a plant
that's
and you
right,
put out a couple of embers, that's
that's right,
not a win. We're
and then call
tinkering around
yourself
the
a hero,
edges.
and then throw yourself a parade,
Call
right?
yourself a hero afterward. We see it with, oh my gosh, it's nauseating, Walter.
Right.
It's the largest spending cut in state history. Well, they just raised the state budget by 43% last biennium. It went from 72 billion to 114 billion. You cut three and a half, four, you call it the largest ever. They just fundamentally transformed our state. They just, it's so nauseating.
Well, and
Oh,
what I explained to these folks is, I'm like, I have no idea what's going to happen in 2028, right? Because it obviously depends, or what am I talking about? 2027, next year, after the election this year.
yep.
I don't know what next term is going to look like because we don't know who's going to be in charge, right?
Well,
But I can definitely tell you what the dynamics of the status quo
yeah,
is going to do to the caucuses,
yeah.
because I've seen it for 4 years, right?
Mhm.
What happens is new people come in. So we've had this injection over the past 4 years. You and me, our class, the folks who came in with us,
22 of
and
us.
then yep, and then this
40
last
something
term,
percent of our caucus. Yeah.
a huge injection of new people, all of whom come in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. We're going to change the world. We're going to do good
Yep.
things, and then they quickly learn, oh, I guess we
This
don't
sucks.
matter,
This
right?
sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so we're going to get a new injection of that. No matter what happens, there's going to be a whole bunch of new people next year because there've been so many retirements and there's so many open seats, right?
Right.
So in a sense, it presents a real opportunity to establish a new culture, right? Because the way the culture currently is you come in for the first time and they teach you just enough about how the institution works
For you to
to
sit
keep
there and do nothing.
to keep it right. What they do is they pull out a chair at the kiddie table and they say, "Here's your coloring book, and
Yep.
here's some
It's the 28th
crayons."
Amendment to the US Constitution. Good job, little guy. You keep
Right. Yep.
coloring. Yep. That's
That's exactly
exactly
right.
right.
And then as bills make their way through the process, they never ever get presented as, what do you guys think of this? You think this is a good idea? What do your constituents think? Is this going to be good for your people? That's never the question that's asked. It's
They tell
always,
you.
yep, it's this is what we're doing. It's been decided. Here's why it's good for you. Here's why it'll be bad if you vote against it, right? And you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, how is this legislating? How is this
We
representing people?
are we are the horrible bureaucracy that Republicans always decry.
Yes.
We go through an entire session. I thought about this a couple weeks back. It's really nihilistic at the time. I thought about, okay, how many committees do you think I sat through? Okay, how many bills do you think we heard? How many of them were laid over so I didn't have a vote for potential inclusion into a giant omnibus bill, which even if that did happen, it would come with a delete all amendment with a 24-hour amendment deadline. So I sat through everything and I couldn't change a thing. I had a vote, or at
You
least the
remember?
illusion of a vote.
You remember that very brief period of time? It was last week of session this year,
Yeah.
where because I think it was because it was the last day.
Yeah,
Because it was the last day, they couldn't do the pre-amendment
I
filing
passed two
thing.
amendments. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, well, there's no rules now. We can
There's
just do
no rules.
whatever.
It was the
And
best day I ever
sudden,
had in that place. The best day I ever had
all
in
of a
that place is
sudden,
when
we're
nobody
all
had
like,
power over us. Yes.
I went from there's no reason for me to even be here, which is how I feel 90% of the time that I'm down there.
Yep.
90% of the time that I'm down there, I'm like, why am I even here?
Yep.
What is the point? Right? Why? You know what? I'm going to go and take a nap. You text me when you need me to do something because apparently I'm
When
not
you
a
need me to be
component.
in the seat. Otherwise, you can
That's
vote
right.
for me.
Right.
Because, yeah,
And all of a
yeah.
sudden, when the rules were off the table and we could just actually legislate, we
Yes.
all got excited. We were like, oh, whoa, what can we possibly do right now?
I was in a
Let's
back
figure out something.
conference room pouring through a 450-page bill looking for each and every line that I could amend to either cut taxes on families, increase the oversight and accountability for fraud. I passed two major fraud reforms by
Yep.
accident because they didn't have their shit together. The one time
Right.
that they didn't have their shit together and the rules weren't
Yes.
in place, I was able to legislate and I did a good job of it.
Well, and the beauty of it is that under those conditions, you were able to get that puck past the goalie because the goalie didn't know what the hell was going on, right?
Because there was
Like,
actually a puck. It's like for the first time in
right?
reality, we have something that we can do.
Yes,
Other than that, we're just skating around in circles and pretending to be players on the ice. It is
that's right.
it is the illusion of a representative government. It
It's
needs to
it's the difference
change.
between it's the difference between hockey and figure skating, right? Like we're figure skaters,
Well,
and
but
what
we're
we
not
ought to
even
do
doing
is
spins. We don't even do spins. We just kind of go back and forth. You know what I mean? Like at least figure skating is somewhat appealing. It's brutal,
depending on
man.
who's doing the skating, but yes.
Yeah, true, true. I would eat shit for sure, but I
Yeah, you
that
don't want
is
to see
what
me
needs to
try.
change. I do
Yeah.
want to see you try. We could do that this winter.
Oh, that's so what a sweet sentiment. I
You'd be
appreciate
graceful. You'd be graceful.
it. Hmm, maybe.
We'll have to give it a try.
There's only one way to find out. It sounds like
There
a good
is.
fundraiser. Let's make it happen. Walter Skates. And
No helmets, no pads.
no helmets, no pads, no ice, just, mud and
Just
plates.
mud and skates. That's kind of like
Yeah,
our legislative career.
yeah.
No, let's
Mhm.
let's wrap up with this, man, because this is a question that's been burning in my head, and I want to know what your take would be on it. The midterms are coming, and
Yeah.
then we're presented with 2028. I think it's kind of presumptive at this point that it's either Vance or Rubio. I know that DeSantis has plans to run. I'm sure he does. Now we have a Thomas Massey who's contemplating a potential run with folks who've been chastised for asking the questions that the Trump administration did promise when they were running, and now all of a sudden they're not delivering on when it comes to Epstein and things like that. Um, what does a post-Trump Republican Party end up looking like? Because in my view, JD Vance has to be sweating bullets right now because he will be in the exact same predicament that Kamala Harris was, where when asked, what would you do different?
Yeah,
If he says anything other than nothing,
right,
then there's a good chance Donald Trump comes out and says, hey, you're not MAGA.
right.
You're not America first.
Well, and I think you answered your own question there. Is I don't think there is a post-Trump Republican Party. There's a post-Trump administration Republican Party, but they're in a post-Trump Republican Party because he's still going to be in the driver's seat, and he's still going to be
He's 80, but he's
influencing.
80. That's the question. He's 80 years old.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not gonna start sitting here and being like, I'm not gonna start pontificating as to when he's no longer going to be with us. But yeah, at some point he'll be gone, but his what he's built won't be, right? So, his sons, his allies, the MAGA movement, as you want to call it, so to speak. And it's not like I'm not being critical of MAGA as such.
No,
I believe in 85-90% of the things that are identified as MAGA. I think the problem is that MAGA has largely been attached at the hip to the whims of whatever Trump wants at any given moment,
a
as
couple of
opposed
weeks
to
ago, he was asked a direct question when it came to America First policy and what does MAGA mean. This was in response to rising gas prices. I mean, Americans were promised lower energy prices. They're not getting them right now. There's a war going on somewhere, and we don't seem to really know how that's going to end or what the goal is. But when Donald Trump was asked the question, what does it mean to be America First? What does it mean to be MAGA? He said something that is 100% true, but it's also a little bit frustrating for people like myself. He said, it's whatever I want it to be,
Yep.
which is what you just said, right?
Yep.
And that's not a movement that inspires. A movement that
Well,
inspires is a
it has inspired clearly, but it's not
hasn't
a movement. It's not a
borne
movement that
fruit.
endures. It's not a movement
Mhm.
that endures because it's built on sand.
Correct.
There's nothing
Correct.
solid underneath it. There's nothing. It's not the founding of America, right? It's
No.
not like here's our principles that endure, that we've discerned from eternal, immutable truths that will endure thousands of years into the future. It's
Right.
here's what we think today, right? Like here's where we're at now, and we might feel differently tomorrow. And say what you want about the left, but they don't have that same weakness. They know exactly what they believe, exactly why they believe it. It happens to be destructive and toxic and anti-life in every sense of the word.
Well, but they go back and forth though too. They do it only if it's politically convenient for either the maintenance of their power or the grasp of it once again. If it, I mean, Hillary, Obama, every Democrat under the sun was anti-gay marriage in 2013. All of them
Right.
were just at a pride parade this past weekend,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
And so, I mean, heck, Tim Walz was wearing NRA hats when he was representing Congressional District 1 here
Sure was.
in Minnesota. Now he is proud to stand up against the NRA
Yeah.
and says so in every single political ad he puts out with the $8 million that he financed for his elections via fraud that he enabled with his government. They believe in nothing. I don't want to be the party that believes in nothing. I want
Right.
to be the party that calls out stupidity when we engage in it. I want to be the party that's, you know, independent minded enough and smart enough as a voting demographic to say, no, Donald, the election wasn't stolen from you. You signed a bill for the CARES Act funding, which gave $80 million to every single Secretary of State under the sun to go and distribute ballots as they saw fit. If anything, you signed away your reelection. When questions arise about Israel or Iran and what the main goal is with this, I want somebody to say whatever's in the best interest of the 300,000 homeless veterans that we're walking over on our sidewalks right now, not what's best for some far off land somewhere else for, their stimulus of their economy. I don't think that those are those are important, or in any sense, it's not a priority that we should be engaged in. People are hurting right here, right now. We're at a war right now on the home front, on many different fronts. And if we don't start looking solely at those and prioritizing them, then I think our party is going to be seen as just as lazy, stupid, arrogant, and kind of a circus clown as we see the left today. And so I hope that there's a figure that arises that really has their values solidified and is able to articulate them with excitement so that people want to be a part of a movement,
Right.
and not just try to. You can't rebottle mega. It doesn't work.
Well, so and going back to my whole sand thing, and I know we're trying to land the plane here, but
No, it's good.
the reason why MAG is in trouble is not only is it built on the sand of the current moment, like today's mood, but there's also no genuine attempts to actually lift up successors, right? So if you want to have an organization that endures, whether it's a government, corporation, a company, small business, your family, whatever,
Yeah.
there has to be a continuity plan, right? Of when I'm gone, how's this going to keep going?
The janitor can rise the ranks even to the CEO sort of thing, or what are you
What,
saying?
what, what I'm saying is that we used to, as a civilization, we used to recognize our own mortality, and we talked about this concept known as posterity, and we
Yep.
used to think in terms of, I'm gonna die someday,
Here's what I'm going
and
to leave to my kids. Yeah.
yeah, and in spite of the fact that I'm not gonna be here, it's still of value to me that something good continues to happen
Being a good
after I'm
shepherd.
gone.
Yeah. A
Right.
foster of the next generation.
Like
Yeah.
my legacy, what casts into the future is on a solid foundation, and it will endure. And the way you do that is by bringing people up behind you,
Yes.
right? Mentorship, developing people, getting people, like basically cloning yourself in other people's development and
Well, not even
maturation.
cloning yourself, but going beyond it. I mean, I think
Yeah,
Walter, what you just did is describe to a T the resentment that Gen Z has with the boomer generation.
yeah,
Um, I mean, we are on the precipice of being the first generation in American history, let alone potentially civilizational history, that receives and inherits a less free and prosperous state, nation, and society than the one that came before them. I
right.
mean, we can't afford anything. We're suicidal as all get out. We're depressed. We're anxious. We're working our butts off, and we can't even put food in the fridge. And we're told then that we need to work harder. We need to stop buying the $7 lattes, like Dave Ramsey recently said. And sorry, you're just gonna have to put up with the high gas prices because Israel says so.
Yeah,
Like that's kind of where we're at. And not to
absolutely.
not to boil it down to that, but that's what it comes off as to many in our spheres.
Well, and not without cause. Again, going back to the folks we mutually know who are, again, just a couple of years younger than you. When I was their age, I was completely independent. I lived on my own. I paid my own rent. I had a job, gainful employment. I was completely self directed. I didn't have to check in with my parents to get permission to do things.
Mhm.
And the folks we know, like they're still in that like halfway hybrid point where it's like, well, I still gotta, and they don't, and what that, and it's so demoralizing spiritually,
Yeah.
right? Like even if your parents are awesome, even if your parents are the most amazing people on the face of the planet, if you still have to depend upon them in that basic capacity, you're never going to feel the type of self
Yes.
actualization and self worth and independence that you
Yep.
properly should when you're 21 years old or 22 years old, right?
We don't have a reason for our feet to hit the ground in the morning and feel as if we
Right.
can create something, like we're inspired to do something.
Yes.
And then on top of that, you got 1 in 4 Gen Zers that are still living with their parents because that's the
And
only way. And they always justify with that's the smart thing to do, right? You're
it
saving
is,
up.
but
Well, what are
the
you saving up
condition,
for? they're not building houses. They're only building these massive developments where you can go be another crab in the bucket. You can live like mice stacked on top of each other, and it's going to be more than a mortgage ever could. And then we're
Yes.
going to go and pass bills in the Minnesota House that grants zoning authority to cities to build more of those massive monstrosities, not houses. Like that's the sort of thing that we're tinkering around the edges with, and we're not getting at any of the the root causes of the things that people are pissed off about.
Yes.
And I think whichever party is capable of putting their thumb on the pulse of that, that's who's going to win out.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I've been saying for years, even before things got as bad as they are now for your generation and younger, I called the shot 10, 15 years ago of there a generation is coming, a day is coming when the people who are in power are going to have been so screwed over by the people who came before them that their attitude regarding things like social security and healthcare and your retirement benefits and all this is going to be F you.
That's why
F
43% of
you.
us are socialists. We think right now we're
Yes.
living under capitalism. We're not. We're living under cronyism. We're living under every time you see Social Security come out of your paycheck, you know you're not going to see a dime of it.
Right.
It's insolvent in 2036.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
resentment is there.
if I may say so myself, I think we've done an excellent job today.
Dude, I think we just kind of aired our grievances for an hour, and hopefully somebody listens. But like
Yeah,
it's it starts with conversations like this, but I appreciate you kicking off Gen Free with me too. I know you're
for
gonna be on
sure.
the board of that. We got some cool stuff coming out, but yeah, this is fun.
Cool. All right, man. Well, we'll see you next time.
Yeah, I'll call you. See you, man.
All right. Take care.